All right, I got to bring my panel in because it's a good one and there's a lot to unpack. MSNBC legal analyst Nick Ackerman, a former Watergate prosecutor, and Donna Brazile, former chair of the DNC and author of the new book, it's probably on your Christmas list, Hacks, the Inside of the Break-ins and Breakdowns that put Donald Trump in the White House. And Evan Siegfried is a Republican strategist, and he brought me a bottle of wine today, so I'm considering letting him go first, but I can't because there's too much news, and I got to go to Nick first. I didn't say you were that nice. Oh. All right, Nick.
Yes.
We got to start with the president's lawyer, John Dowd, telling NBC, quote, "The president cannot obstruct justice because he is the chief law enforcement officer under the Constitution's Article 2 and has every right to express his view of any case." Is that true?
That's absolutely false. It all comes down to what was his intent in talking to Comey and telling him to stop the Flynn investigation. I mean, there's no question. John Mitchell, who was Nixon's attorney general, who was entrusted with enforcing the laws, was convicted of obstruction of justice. That is a ridiculous defense. It has never been raised before. It will never pass muster with any court. It all comes down to whether or not Donald Trump had a corrupt intent trying to stop the investigation when he told James Comey to stop the investigation. But all of this is smoke because the real investigation here, the real indictment that's going to come out, has to do with a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians in order to throw the election to Donald Trump. You can see that in the Flynn plea. The materiality for that false statement has nothing to do with anything but the collusion allegation between the campaign and the Russian government. And going through all of this are the emails that were stolen out of the DNC, starting with Papadopoulos knowing about this in April, going to Goldstone telling Don Jr. that he was going to show up and give him all these emails, and then having them all go on to WikiLeaks and to Guccifer 2.0, looks like through Roger Stone, based on what we know. What we're seeing is a major conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government that is starting to come into shape. The obstruction is just part of it. It's the motive why they're obstructing justice.
We can debate whether or not President Trump's tweet is a tacit or kind of sort of admission of guilt, because that's one where you're going to hear whatever you want to hear.
Correct.
But why would the president put it out there to begin with? I mean, think about the hot water he could be in, or even his family members. Why would he put the tweet out?
Because he can't help himself. Look, every time
in a nutshell,
he can't help himself. Look, I waited all Friday afternoon for the president to tweet something out, because this guy, when it comes to tweeting, he's a master of the 140, now 280 characters. But he waited. He waited to get what I call the right temper, because he puts a little bit of hot sauce every time he tweets. He wanted to put a dig out there. I don't think a criminal defense lawyer would have drafted a tweet that would have put this president in more legal jeopardy. I think every time the president tweets, injects himself into this investigation, he contradicts himself, and when he gets caught in a big ball of what I call mess, he then distracts and says, but what about Hillary? Come on, this is not about Hillary Clinton. This is about Donald Trump. It's about his campaign. It's about the obstruction inside the White House. And it's time for the president to get out of the way and let Mr. Mueller finish his investigation.
Well, what do you think about this argument that Dowd has that maybe Dowd wrote the tweet? To me, it doesn't matter who drafted it. President Trump's name is on that tweet, and it was Sean Spicer who said, consider those tweets official statements from the White House. Who cares who drafted it? Your word is your bond.
For intent. I think what John Dowd is doing, regardless of who wrote that particular tweet, is trying to go out and say, well, we don't know who's writing all of Trump's tweets. Dan Scavino has access to the account. I have access to the account. If you can take away the president's tweets, which are his greatest liability, as a legal argument for intent for whatever he did, it's a smart legal play in my book. I'm not a lawyer as well, so I'm very thankful for that. But on the what about Hillary?
I do take umbrage on that. I mean, the law is extremely clear. When a lawyer says something on behalf of his client, that's an admission for the client.
But he didn't say it on behalf of the president. The president said, I mean...
He said it himself, that's right. But the fact that the lawyer wrote it doesn't make any difference. It's zero.
But
under the
forgetting
law,
that impeachment trials are political trials, not criminal. And on the Hillary thing, remember when O.J. Simpson's defense team said, what about all the other murderers who are not getting convicted and prosecuted? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whatsoever. What is going on with President Trump is he's being investigated by the special counsel. Sarah Huckabee Sanders said on November 3rd, 2016, if you're under investigation and you're attacking the FBI that's investigating you, you're losing. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing. I wonder if Sarah Huckabee Sanders will go to the podium today and say it again
He's
today.
attacking the integrity and the professionalism of the FBI. Just a couple of weeks ago, he called the members of the intelligence community hacks. I mean,
okay, but that's not new.
No, I know, but he's attacking the people that work for him. They work for the American people.
He's been doing that since day one.
But this is something troubling about a president who ran on the quote-unquote law and order platform is now undermining and undercutting the FBI and this criminal investigation.
And it all takes away from the big picture, which is there is a conspiracy that is going to be proven
but Nick,
that they're investigating.
President Trump wants to take us away from the big picture.
Of course.
Does this end up, though, he said?
No.
Since James Comey's claims, President Trump is saying, never did it now.
No, not at all, because you have to look at all the corroborating circumstances that support James Comey here. He has contemporaneous notes. Trump has no contemporaneous notes. Trump admitted to Lester Holt that the whole purpose in firing Comey was to get rid of the Russian thing. He admitted it to the Russians. So when you're a lawyer and you're prosecuting a case, you look at when you have two people who give two divergent stories, what you want to argue to the jury is, what is the corroborating evidence that makes the government's witness credible? Here, the corroborating evidence on behalf of James Comey is overwhelming.
All right, well, help me understand what counterpoints work, right? Right now, Trump team wants to go after ABC News and Brian Ross as a great deflection point.
Yeah, well.
But how about this Washington Post revelation that one of Mueller's agents had sent anti-Trump tweets and Mueller had to take him off the Russia investigation? How much of an issue does this end up being? Is it a real problem? I mean, Mueller took him off. He moved the guy. I think he's in HR now. But is it a real problem?
I don't think so. Look, I think what Director Mueller is doing is making sure that this investigation is conducted with the utmost professionalism. He was right to remove him. I think what Donald Trump does on a daily basis is try to figure out how to muddy the waters, how to include more people so he can distract and distort, and then,
it works.
It works temporarily until he contradicts himself again. And that's why I think Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble today because of what he did over the weekend. He should have just quieted.
Mueller's move is actually really a net positive because it shows that he's putting the integrity of the investigation. And these weren't even tweets. These were private texts. And legally, you can have a political opinion privately. When the private text came to Mueller's attention over the summer, he said, "You're out." That no ifs, ands, or buts. Why? Because he wants this investigation to be as above board as possible. You can't have its credibility and impartiality questioned whatsoever. And Robert Mueller was right, and it was smart for him to do it.
All right, Nick, then split this up for me. When President Trump muddies the waters and adds the tweets and the confusion, I think it helps his base. It even helps average Americans that hear so much noise, they start to tune it out and say, just remind me when it affects my taxes or my health care. But from a legal perspective, is Donna right in terms of this is a short-term win in terms of how people feel about President Trump?
I think it's a short-term win, not only from a legal perspective, but also from a political perspective. When the major indictment comes out here, which it looks like it's going to, when you have a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government to throw the election to Donald Trump, as Minister Flynn's own assistant said, right? And you have all of this evidence now coming out across the boards, going from April to June to July to August, and you know that the conversation between Flynn and Kislyak related to this conspiracy, even though it happened after the election. You know that there's got to be a major indictment coming out. And when that comes out and it pinpoints that the people in the campaign were conspiring with the Russian government, the whole thing changes. One
thing you're missing, and I think people haven't talked about enough, is you're hearing in the conservative base world, okay, well, what has Mueller got to show for this? He spent $5 million. He's gotten George Papadopoulos, who arguably was on the periphery. He's gotten Manafort and Gates for things that weren't really related to the campaign, and he's gotten Flynn for lying to the FBI. It's time to end the investigation.
No.
Well, people have said we should, or if Trump fired Mueller, that would be a red line. Trump doesn't have to do that. The Bannon world is actually saying get Congress to defund it, because they can't do their investigation if they don't have the money to fund it. And that's their sly way of trying to do it, and you're going to see it snowball.
All right, well, guess what? We have months more to focus on this. We're going to take a break.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.